Hello,
Hey, good evening,
good
good
morning.
morning.
So,
Yes,
it's another wonderful session, and another wonderful person is waiting for us. A spectacular photographer, a great speaker, and a wonderful artist, I must say.
yeah,
So, we have been talking about the technical side for a long time. We have people speaking about the science part of it, but never had somebody who was talking about the art part of it. So Parit is going to be our guest for the
yeah.
day, and he's
That
going to
that
talk more on the
art thing is something that we were missing from all this while.
yes,
So
yes,
today we got Mr. Pareet Shah, who is a very good friend. He's a known wildlife photographer based in Kenya, and he has been shooting wildlife since the age of 12. So it's that amount of experience that we are going to hear from him. Let's welcome
Parit.
Pareet.
Hi, Parit.
Hello.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, guys, for such a warm welcome. I really appreciate it. Can you hear me okay and see
Yes,
the
Yes,
screen?
yes.
yes.
Okay, so thanks, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. Thank you for inviting me, Nisha and Hermie. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it. It's
Thank
a
you for
privilege for me.
accepting our invite.
No worries. So the plan today is I'll do a quick introduction and then talk through a few of my images. And
Yes.
if you guys have any questions, then feel free to send them across. And Nisha or Hermie, you can just stop me wherever I am and we can talk through any questions that are coming in.
Yeah, sure.
So, very quick introduction. My name is Parit. I am based in Mombasa, Kenya. I was born and brought up in Mombasa. I have very fond memories of my parents taking me to national parks on safari when we were really young. At that time, I was mostly Savo, Amboseli, sometimes Masai Mara. I actually have really fond memories of seeing big prides of lions at that time that we'll never probably ever see. We've even got old photos from my dad of like prides of 35, 40 lions together. Really amazing stuff. Lots of elephants in Savo. Uh, so I started actually shooting when I was 12. My dad has a brilliant uh, kind of habit of keeping all our old school reports. So something we were going through the other day, I was showing my kids my school reports, and there was one when I was probably 13 or 14 from the photography club teacher, and the teacher had said Parit's photography leaves a lot to be desired. He definitely doesn't have a career in photography. And I got a D for that actually. So I was probably not destined at that time to follow this passion that I have at the moment. But things changed. I moved to London when I was 16, and then we started a family there. Lived there for 20 years, but every year we would come back to Kenya for on safari. Recently, almost 6 years ago, we moved back to Kenya, to Mombasa, and that allowed me to reignite this passion that I have for wildlife photography. And now we spend a lot of time in the game parks of Kenya. So I've got some numbers here on the left. I thought that'll be a fun way to introduce some of these things, facts, and people around me. So the first one is one. One is for, I've got one beautiful wife, Dipali. You can see her in the picture there. She's very, very supportive of someone who spends a lot of time away from home. And she's the backbone in this whole thing.
Great.
Two, my two kids, Arav and Amaya, mostly naughty, but if you give them a camera, they'll be quiet and shoot away. They absolutely love photography. They live and breathe wildlife photography. Yeah, maybe one day you'll get a chance to see their work as well.
Sure.
Uh,
Yes.
and three is this is the number of camera bodies I use while I'm on safari. So I moved from Nikon to Sony about 3 to 4 years ago. Brands are just brands. You'll see hear me talk about that when you're talking about art. The equipment doesn't really matter that much at this stage. So the three bodies I use for anyone who's interested is an A9 Mark II, an A7R4, and an A7R3. 4 is the number of lenses I normally have in my bag. So all the way from a 400mm 2.8, then a 70 to 200. I also use a 16 to 35 for my wider shots and landscape shots. And very recently, I've been using a prime lens, a 135mm f1.8, and I just love taking portraits with that. So that's a new lens in my kit, borrowed from my wedding photography side. I forgot to mention in my intro, I also do wedding photography. So
Okay.
I'll talk about that in this presentation, how some of the things run in parallel, some of the learnings, especially from one to the other. 7, this is an interesting one. This is the highest number of leopards we have seen in one day. It's never repeated for me since that day. We had beginner's luck that time. We were with the family actually, and it was an incredible day. My favorite animal is a leopard, and we got to see 7 in one day, which was pretty awesome. 12 is the age that I got my first camera and I started actually shooting wildlife. 90 is on average the number of days every year I spend out on safari. We normally, when we go on safari, it's normally about 5 to 7 days long. Sometimes it can get longer. And 6652, I did a count this morning. This is the number of photographs, wildlife photos that I have in my catalog or in my Lightroom catalog at the moment. So I'm very strict about my photos and the process after that. I delete all the so-called rubbish, and I've ended up with 6652 so far. So it sounds like a lot, but actually probably not a lot. I mean, Hermie and Nisha, you must have loads more than this, right?
It is true.
The thing is, we don't sit and delete.
Delete it. Yeah. If I'm going to do that, I will definitely require a year to do that.
I'm very lazy in doing that.
Oh gosh, yeah, I'm pretty anal about that. I just like to delete stuff that I'm never going to use again. Sometimes I regret it, but mostly it's a clean mind.
Yeah.
So that's a bit about me. Now, I want to really get into this definition of what exactly is wildlife photography. What do we mean when we say art? Because a lot of people say art. I'm a fine art wildlife photographer. What does it really mean? So I just took down some definitions from the dictionary here to go through it pretty quickly. Wildlife, this is easy. Wild animals collectively, the native fauna and flora of a region. Fairly simple to understand. It's when we're connecting wild animals together with the landscape environment and habitat that they're living in. Photography, that is a picture made by capturing light, a Latin word for light, photo. So I cannot stress this enough. Light is just so important. A lot of people forget about the importance of light. When we talk about light, we basically talking about how light is hitting a sensor on the camera. And this used to be how it's hitting the film in the camera, right?
Yeah.
When we're talking about light, I'm also talking about the quality and the quantity of light. There's different qualities of light. Early in the morning, you have that beautiful soft light. It repeats itself again towards the end of the day. But in the middle of the day, you have that harsh light coming down straight from above, especially when you're photographing near the equator, which we are here most of the time. So this is really important once you understand light. And it's also the absence of light. So a lot of times we would underexpose to make certain parts dark or completely black. So that is when we're limiting the amount of light that's coming onto our sensors to highlight something else. So all really important stuff going around in terms of when we're talking and thinking about light. Now, this is the most fun one, art. Expression, application of human creative skill and imagination. So don't forget, we're talking about creativity. We're talking about skill. A lot of people think art doesn't have skill. It's just going there, shooting some random stuff, converting it to black and white, and then calling it art. But it's all about creativity, imagination. How many times do you sit while you're on safari or before a safari and just let your mind go wild? Think about, oh, this is my dream image, or this is something I'd love to capture, or I can't imagine if something like this was to happen. So going on to the definition, typically in a visual form such as painting, sculpture, or photographs, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. So nowhere in this expression they're talking about anything technical for art, right? No one is talking about shutter speeds. No one is talking about F numbers or ISOs or anything like that. This is all emotional. This is all beauty. This is appreciating an image for its artistic and intrinsic value. Now, beauty is very subjective, which we'll go on to in the next slide. Emotional power. I always say, I really want when you're looking at a photograph, I want you to feel that moment, not just see the photo. I want you to feel that actual photo. Think about the five senses or the six senses, the smell. Do you feel certain things when you're looking at it? Can you hear the sounds of nature? So it's really going deep inside you to connect those emotions or your senses to that photograph. When you look at a photo or an artistic photo, the last thing I think about is, oh, I wonder whether that was shot at a 200th of a second or a 500th of a second. By that time, I really don't care. It's that end product that really matters. So I'm turning this around completely from, say, some of the previous webinars we might have had on technical skills, etc. This is really talking about the artistic side of it.
Yeah.
Now going down this, even breaking it down even more in terms of the art. Okay, so the first thing I always say, we've got to respect nature. Wherever we're shooting, we're in their habitat, in the animal's habitat. So we've got to respect the animals. This is so important. You wouldn't like it if someone comes into your house and starts disturbing you whilst you're trying to look after your babies, etc. So you really got to respect the animals. And I've found recently more and more guides, especially in Kenya, are getting more tuned to this, especially some of the local guides who really understand the importance of conservation. Second point, understanding animal behavior. I would say before you become a good photographer, you really need to understand animal behavior or try and learn it through your journey. There's no point you having the best gear in the world and maybe even having the best imagination if you don't really understand behavior. You could be sitting with a leopard up on a tree, not really knowing, will it come down, will it not? I agree, a lot of it is guesswork, but if you know about the behavior, you'll know at some point the leopard will come down to look for food or to look for a place to stay at night, etc. So animal behavior is something even I've learned so much from my fellow guides, other wildlife photographers, watching documentaries, etc. Third point, who are you shooting for? This is a really important question in this day and age when we're talking about art, right? And ask yourself this very, very honestly. Are you shooting for social media? Are you shooting for yourself? Are you shooting for someone else? Are you shooting commercially? Who exactly are you shooting for? Because that will really determine how artistic a photo can be or cannot be. For example, if you're shooting for a very specific technical documentary, then you're focusing more on behavioral aspects of an animal. So less of art, but more of behavior. So it really depends who you're shooting for. And be honest with yourself. I've seen a lot of people shooting for social media rather than themselves. And this will change their shooting style as well. The next point is about how subjective art is. This is what I love. This is one point I absolutely love about art. there could be photos which I would absolutely love, but my wife would hate, or some photos that my kids would love, and I would say, this doesn't talk to me. So art is so subjective. It's something that's super cool in this whole aspect. I say no limits. Don't have any limits on your creativity or your imagination. There should be no limits. Once you start boxing yourself with limits, that's when your creativity stops or is kind of limited within a certain parameter. So free yourself, especially when you're shooting. Have zero limits. Go with a clear mind and really, make the most of the time you are out there on safaris. Light, again, I keep on saying this. The presence of light is as important as the absence of light. This photo, for example, on the right, just very, very quickly, you can see there's actually very little light in it. Most of it is dark. There's a very thin sliver of light during sunset in this photo, but that is what your eye is drawn to. So sometimes all that negative space and the darkness is good, for taking your eye straight to a point where you want the viewer to go to. The last point, self-critique, again, extremely important. You have to look back at your photos and say, yep, this is what I'm happy with. I wish I could have done this better. There's a very, very fine line between self-critique or too much self-critique and kind of loss of happiness, because if you're always looking negatively at your photos, you will never be happy. You'll always think, I wish I'd done this, or I wish I'd shot this in a different way. So approach this with caution, but I always suggest you look back at your photos periodically to see the journey, how far you've come, the improvement, what you can do differently. That's the only way we'll learn. I think it was last week's webinar with you, both Nisha and Hermie, where I really liked what Jeffrey Wu said, that on social media and within your family, everyone's going to give you a pat on your back and say, great image, great, brilliant image, but is it really a good image? And who decides whether it's a good image or not? At the end of the day, we come back to who are you shooting for, right? If you're shooting for competitions, you'll shoot and edit very differently compared to if you're shooting for yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the last point, again, is I made a very quick reference to wedding photography. So I have been shooting weddings for the past 6 years or so, and there's a lot of parallels from the wedding photography industry to the wildlife photography. Again, in terms of compositions, light, how we use light and shadow, etc. I just wish sometimes we could get our animals to pose like we do for, say, brides and grooms, or even vice versa. Sometimes the bride and groom to pose less and just follow kind of very natural poses, etc. But there's a lot of parallels, actually, and I've learned a lot from one genre to the other, and I try and apply it as much as possible. So I just want to stop very briefly before we delve into the photos. Are there any questions at this stage, or shall I carry on?
We do have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, from Silent Whispers, Fine Art Photography is asking, what differentiates a cliche image from a non-cliche image?
I think it's a good question. Maybe something I should have covered here in terms of one of the characteristics. A cliched image at the end of the day is something you've seen online or with your friends or on social media, etc. A non-cliched image is something that is very unique, very original, and that grabs your attention. My very rough indication of, is this a good image, is, does it grab my attention for longer than 5 seconds? A cliched image, I would have seen a similar image before, and I would move on to the next image. Yeah, good image, good technically, but I've seen it, I'm bored, I want to try and capture something different. A non-cliched image would really draw me into the image, and I want to carry on looking at it, either because of its beauty and its intrinsic value as an image, or because I haven't understood the image yet, and there's so much happening in the image. There's hidden messages, etc., that I really want to look into it for longer and longer. For me, that is kind of an informal measure of a success of a good artistic image.
Okay.
And we have another request from Dr. KM Anand. You can share the deleted files with him.
Good one. I do like that. Maybe there's a market for that. I've been reading a lot about. I think I forgot what it's called. I think they're called FTPs, right? I don't know whether you guys have heard of that recently, but it's basically where you sell your digital files to the highest bidder, and they can do whatever they want with it. When you sell that file, you sell all your rights, copyrights, everything. And I've seen a few people do that in the photography world. So I could say, for example, sell a particular file that I'm not using, and whoever the buyer is can do anything they want with that, obviously, except enter it in competitions and stuff. But it's a pretty novel way of now having a marketplace for certain things like artwork and images.
That's great.
Right, I never knew about this.
All right, so I'm gonna go into. I've got about 20 or so images.
Okay.
The plan now is to maybe spend a minute or so on each image and just talk you guys through what I was shooting, the story behind the image, maybe some of my thought process for that. Okay.
Yeah.
And if
going-
there's, sorry, tell me.
There is a hide button on your screen. Can you please click on that so that? Yes.
Yes. Oh, no, hear me. Yeah, there is.
You can again return back to that presentation.
Can you see it?
No. I think it's closed.
Oh, hold on. So I'm going to share screen.
Yes.
Are we good?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
So we start off with this image. This is a big male leopard. His name is Olapa. As you know, these male leopards are quite hard to come by and in the Mara, and they're pretty shy when they do make an appearance. You generally get a fleeting glimpse of them and then they disappear. On this particular occasion, funnily enough, we were looking for a female leopard in the same area, Cabosso, and some people had actually spotted her. And all of a sudden, a lot of the cars were rushing around because they then spotted this male leopard. We caught a very quick glimpse of him, and then he disappeared into the bush. Our guide, Bernard, drove all the way around, like almost 3-4 minutes, all the way around to the next kind of clearing away from the river forest. And we were hoping this leopard comes through kind of that clearing. What was really worrying me at this point was the radio was going crazy. Everyone else was seeing this leopard and talking, and kind of you know how the radio chatter in Mara gets really lively sometimes. And we were there by ourselves. I had 3 of our friends, photo safari clients with us, and we were just staring at this forest in front of us. And in our minds, we were visualizing, please, leopard, please come out of this, come out of here. And at the same time, we could just hear all this chatter on the other side. So I was thinking, oh, is this leopard going to come? Is he not? Is he going to come? Is he not? And whilst we were kind of visualizing this, I saw this one area of the forest where there was just really beautiful light coming in the middle of it, just from the top. So that was the only area that was lit up. And I turned around to one of the friends and I said, can you imagine if this leopard or lapa just walks through that? And Bernard, the guide, said, trust me, he will. This is his path. He likes walking through this kind of along the river. He'll come through here. You guys just be ready. You let me do my job. You be ready with the cameras. And we were all ready. And literally from the side of our eye, we saw this orange thing just come through in front of us. And within a few seconds, head on, he was just coming towards us head on. The tail was up. He was very, very determined, and eyes locked on our car, locked on us, as all of us were shooting this exact picture. So really beautiful memory for us, really good picture at the end of the day. What I like the best, remember initially we talked about light. So your eye always gets drawn to the brightest part of the image, which in this case is the leopard, or even the leopard's eyes. So your eye goes straight there, and everything else around it is pretty dark. It's the deep greens of the forest. For this shot, I'd actually underexposed by maybe 2/3 of a stop to really focus on that leopard coming out of the forest. And yeah, I don't have much else to say about this image, but it's one of my favorite leopard photos I've taken. It's just really captivating, especially when it's printed up and put on a wall. It just kind of jumps at you here.
Yeah.
The next one. So we were watching these 3 giraffes drinking water. This photo is actually about, I think, 3 years old. We were watching these 3 giraffes drinking water at a nearby stream, and every now and then they would kind of come up, moving their heads because the oxpeckers were bothering them. And I love shooting from the ground level. So I was shooting down at the ground level, and the sun was behind the giraffe. So I knew we could get some kind of a cool photo here. Tried clicking a few times. It just wasn't working because behind the giraffe, there was no dark areas or dark spots at all. And giraffes, when they become skittish, they stop drinking and they move away pretty quickly. So I knew we probably only had a minute or so to kind of try and get this shot right. So I told our driver to move really far back and put on a bigger lens, a 400 2.8, so that the background now of the giraffe we were getting was those very dark trees rather than the red sand, the lighter red sand.
Yeah.
Because of the darker trees in the back, we managed to highlight the drops coming out of the giraffe's mouth. And this turned out to be quite a cool image, almost kind of the giraffe dancing with that stream of water. It brings me to another point in terms of editing. I normally don't spend more than a maximum of 5 minutes per photo editing it. This photo took me over 20 minutes to edit.
Okay.
I converted it to black and white, darkened the background a bit more. It's not, I would say, my signature style. I don't generally like these kind of very dark backgrounds or, the studio style of photos in the wild.
Yeah.
But in this instant, it did work quite well. It's not something I would keep on repeating, actually. But the key again here is the light. The light was behind the giraffe, highlighting all these particles of water as the light went through the water particles. It was highlighting them really nicely. The next image is actually one I shared on social media just a few days ago, and this was taken in Feb or March this year. We were 3 cars in the Mara, and we were looking for Scarface and Morani and their pride for a while then. It was coming up to about 8 a.m. in the morning. And you guys know, once it passes about 7:15, 7:30, that light becomes horrible and so bright, like just really, really bright. And if you're shooting against it, I I hate it, unless it's a bit lower. So again, one of the clients who was with us spotted Morani in the distance, big male lion just walking towards us. So we got super excited. He looked like he was in really good shape. We were clicking away. And then one of the other guys from the back of the car said, "Hold on, there's another lion just behind." And when we looked, it was Scarface, and my heart literally skipped a beat, because again, for those viewers who are watching, you know when you go looking for Scarface, he's hidden. He's hiding away somewhere. And when your clients, or when you really want to see him, that's the time you're never going to see him, because he's just elusive. For me, he's like the ghost. One of the oldest lions in the Mara, so much character. So what I decided to do was, we were shooting against the light at that point. So I would either have had to underexpose and then bring out the shadows in post-production, which would look fairly unnatural. So I decided to overexpose by almost 2 stops here, to give this really, ghost-like feeling of him walking through fog, and the grass is all really blurred and smoothened out. And just I really like the power in this image as he's walking towards you, the feeling of mystery. This is again that image that evokes certain feelings inside you when you see it. In contrast to the previous photo, this photo took me about 10 seconds to edit. I just converted it into black and white and increased the highlights, and that was literally it. I've not done anything else to this photo. Okay. So moving on, we talked earlier about art being your creativity and beauty. Some of you may argue this is not a beautiful photo, but again, in my eyes, it is. And this is why I like it. It's all really subjective. It's a gruesome subject to talk about, but can you find beauty in death? Can you find art in death? We've watched the Tanabora hunting several times, not as many as your last guest, but still a fair few times. And we've had many images of them kind of filling our screen, the full cheetah and the prey, them doing their last pounce and stuff. This time I really wanted to try something different. And we were luckily very, very close to where the action actually happened, or the final action happened. So again, I zoomed in, probably at, I think this was at 400 millimeters, and really concentrated on a very, very narrow area in terms of the composition. So to get all that detail. So purposely I've cropped out the eyes. You can't see the eyes of the predator or the prey. Yeah. But in turn, you can see the sharp claws, the teeth, the fur, the hair of the topi. And there's a little bit of a clue on the left-hand side of the image, which tells us it's a cheetah hunting here. Cheetahs have non-retractable claws, so the claws are always out. This photo looked pretty good in color, but it looked better in black and white because there was no distractions, actually. Especially between the claw and the muzzle of the topi. So again, a bit of maybe you might call it. People can argue whether this is art because there's death in this photo, but personally, it's beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So it's what you make of the photo.
Yeah.
The next photo, this one was taken around the migration time, I think 2 years ago. We had a wonderful crossing, and for migrations, I love shooting wide. I generally don't like to zoom in too much. And this, for me, we had a really nice viewpoint. The animals are coming in from the right all the way down and back up on the left. Lots of smoke, lovely backlight from all the dust that's been created. And for me, a little bit of the mystery on the left of the image is we don't know where the wildebeest are going, so that creates a little bit of a mystery in the image. And also, this is one of those images, when I look at it, I always feel like I can hear all those hooves thundering down. I can taste that dust in the atmosphere. You can hear all the splashing, etc. So this is one of those images that really evokes all those senses into me. And I could have shot quite tight, especially around the center there where all the wildebeest were jumping. But I really liked that whole creamy background to it, and almost that line coming up and down again here. The next image is actually one of my favorite images. Her name is Bella too. I've not seen her for a while recently, but we had seen her kill up on a tree for a while that day, and we kept on coming back to that same site. No sign of the leopard, but we could see that the kill was there, and some other people had sighted her the night before, so we knew she would come back at some point. We waited and waited and waited for hours. This shot was probably at about 6:15, 6:20, the last rays of the sun. You can see all that light coming from the left of the photo, almost horizontal light. You can see from the shadow there of the leopard. And there was one spot. You can see above the leopard, it's all very dark, right?
Yes.
So there was no light hitting there. This middle part was the part which was being lit. That was a spot I wanted the leopard in. And I was just hoping, visualizing, hopefully we get her, coming up the tree with this, I think it was an impala she had. And not only did she do this, but she did it 4 times. She went up and down, up and down. And it was just, it was a visual treat for us. Remember, I talked about self-critique. Yes. This is one image that I keep going back to and really kicking myself. This image was probably shot at 400 millimeters as well, but I really kick myself. I wish I'd shot this at either 24 millimeters or 35 to give that big image of all these branches of a tree and then the small leopard in there, nicely lit by the sun. It would have been a magical image, but again, we can always dream when we look back. But it's a learning point for me that in the future with some images like this, I might try to pull out a bit and go wider. There was a really nice other image we got off this as well, pretty artistic, which I will share later, not in this slideshow, but another time. You can see all the orange flowers on the left. We got a really nice shot of her behind those flowers, so really pretty with all the light streaming through that as well.
Mm-hmm.
This photo for me really describes Africa in one picture. It's the big open savanna, big grasslands. Again, the default option for me would have been easily just zoom in to this cheetah and just capture the cheetah from the back, the figure of the cheetah looking over. But I pulled out there, shot this at 35 millimeters, and really wanted to give a wide view of the mountains behind. Then there's a little bit of rain, then the different shades of green in the grasslands, and then the cheetah. So at this point, he was looking over in the open savanna to try and look for some prey. Did you know cheetahs can see 5 kilometers away, and they can recognize prey from that distance? So he was just looking for prey. They'd gone hungry for 2 days by this time. So he was looking for some prey in that kind of distance. So it's a really nice magical moment for us to see an animal in their habitat, really looking over their kind of kingdom on this.
Oh,
This image was shot at about 6:45 p.m. The sun was down. I generally limit my ISO to 6,400, unlike your previous speaker.
It was a thing for me, honestly. Jeffrey's talk on the ISO. I really need to do that next time whenever I'm in Mara.
Yeah, it's different cameras, different scenarios, different editing.
exactly. Yeah.
It's a huge minefield, but it was an eye opener. Let me put it that way, and it's a great point to experiment, right? Because until you try it, you can never say that it
Yeah.
works or it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I think this was shot at 6,400, but the story behind this image, there were just some opportunistic hyenas looking at these gazelles crossing their path from left to right, and there was a very skittish hyena on the left of the screen. We saw him, and we thought anytime if he or she runs, we couldn't tell if it was a he or a she, but if he or she runs, all these gazelles are going to start jumping. And when they do their jump, when they want to create awareness amongst the others, they do this really funny hop jump. I'm sure you guys have seen it, which is really high. They jump really high so that they're passing a message on to the predators that we've seen you and we'll escape from you. So I had this image in my head. I'd visioned it for like a year or so, that I want a jumping gazelle in front of some kind of prey. So my focus was locked on, dead on to that hyena, and I just clicked away, hoping that this would happen. And rightly so, the gazelles got spooked at one point, and they started jumping, and luckily managed to get this one frame. Again, I probably wouldn't put this on my wall as a piece for a wall, but it's quite a unique photo. There was earlier a question about cliched images compared to non-cliched. So this would be more the non-cliche category, where you don't often see images like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was more of a have fast reactions, a high frames per second count, and hopefully you'll get that perfect frame in terms of composition.
And it's definitely it gives you goosebumps when you see it. I was like, oh my god, what an image.
Yeah, and kind of thinking, I wonder what happened next.
Yeah.
This was a lion couple. I believe this is Halftail, actually, the famous male lion who was around Topi Plains and Rhino Ridge for almost a year. They were on honeymoon this was probably the second or third day, and we caught them early in the morning. We were trying to look for them, and we did find them. And as the sun was rising, that early morning kind of stretching they do, they wake up slowly. And I noticed that the lioness, especially when she was yawning, all this smoke was blowing out of her mouth, and the sunlight behind the lion was really lighting all these little particles of moist air from her mouth. So we just had to be super patient to get this. There's so many variables in this shot. If the lioness faced a few degrees to the left, we wouldn't have got this shot. A few more degrees to the right, it would be the perfect shot. If the lion was also facing in that direction, it would be a great shot. So a lot of variables, but I was quite happy with this final shot I got. It really shows the cold, crisp air of Masai Mara early in the morning. and typical lazy lion behavior, where they're just waking up to kind of oversee their kingdom. This is an interesting image, and again, it's an image that had been on my mind for a while. I just hadn't managed to capture it. I'm going to actually turn it over to Hermie or Nisha. Can you see what I can see?
Yes. On the left bottom.
Okay, good. Fantastic. I wasn't sure whether the detail would be picked up on this webinar or not.
Yeah.
So this is my favorite leopard. Her name is Cabosso. She's quite a famous leopard in Masai Mara, a very successful mother. I have generally, when we've met her, we've generally got very close-up shots of her in terms of her behavior, her yawning, shaking her head, interaction with her and her cub, etc. But I never really got a nice shot or frame of her in her environment, in her big habitat, in her forest. This is her home. So we had already captured what you don't see in that frame, actually, just to the left, is her little cub. Now, this is her current cub that she has, who's still to be named. But you don't see the cub because the cub was just playing on the side there. But we'd already by this time got those zoomed in shots of the interaction between the mother and the cub, etc. So I really wanted that big shot, the one of the leopard in her real habitat. And again, this is a really nice, it would make a nice print. I've not printed it, but I can imagine, the big kind of image where you have to spot the leopard. And we were talking earlier about how long can you stare at a photo for. This is one of those that you might stare at for more than 5 seconds because you're trying to figure out what is happening. Where is the animal? What's Parit trying to show here? She is actually looking at some noise towards the right of the river. The birds started crackling quite heavily, so she's looking at there, trying to figure out what is happening. I want to try and do more of this photography. This is my development plan in terms of photography. I want to do more photos, create more images of animals in their habitats, in their kingdoms, rather than shooting everything close up at the full zoom range we have. And this is something I've been working at quite hard for the last year or so. So hopefully you'll see more images like this coming through from my side soon.
Great.
Again, so controversial image, right? Is this art? When has this ever been art? Can you call this art? An animal urinating? Why the hell would something like this even be called art? But it's a different image. It's one I'd imagined thinking about a bark of a tree in a lot of detail, taking up more than half of the image. A lot of people here must have photographed cheetahs leaving their mark or marking their territory at trees. And, this is something very different I wanted to try. Actually, the bonus of this image was the other cheetah.
Yes.
Funnily enough, that cheetah is not looking at the urinating, but that cheetah is actually looking at our car. But it creates that image or the vision that the cheetah is looking at this. So again, I want all the viewers to try, when you're going out in the field next, try something different. Don't just try the same shot of the cheetah looking at you while it's marking its territory. Focus on where you think the urine's going to be, or on the tree bark in the same plane, and then shoot, or focus on the tail and then shoot, because that's roughly the same plane. So again, we said art is subjective. To some of you, you might think this is gross. Why the hell is Parit even wasting his time doing this sort of stuff? But to me, it's a different image. And it, again, I probably will be kicked out of the house if I ever try and put this up on a wall somewhere. But no, it's a different image.
Yeah.
The next one in turn is quite a different one again. I was trying to rack my brains today. I seriously can't remember whether this was at sunrise or sunset. What I do remember is we were at the bottom of a lugger. The typical Masai Mara luggers that you cross, just clinging on to your car, hoping that your driver has more confidence than you have. The car's sliding all over, water's coming into the car. We were at the bottom, and again, the driver spotted just at the top of the bank 2 elephants, and it was a really, really beautiful sight. We waited there for, I think, 10 to 15 minutes, waiting for that perfect composition where half of the screen is dark black coming from the grass, and the other half is of the animals, ideally looking both in different directions, to create that really beautiful, very smooth image. The colors were really nice, lovely blues in the sky with matched with the oranges. I will need to check the EXIF data to just check whether it was at sunrise or sunset. But yeah, this is quite a popular picture as well. This photo was taken in Olpejeta. So for some of the viewers who might not be familiar with Kenya that much, Olpejeta is a great place if you want to shoot rhinos and elephants in one frame. There's a very high probability of you getting that shot. We waited for almost half an hour for this shot. I had the elements, one or the other. So I had 2 rhinos looking at me, but no elephant. At other times, we had 2 elephants looking at me, but no rhinos, or 1 elephant by itself. So for this shot, I got down pretty low to get that image of being close to the elephant. The light was pretty flat. There wasn't much to work with in terms of light, so I had to bring the shadows out a little bit in post-production on the elephant itself. But most of all, what I like about this image is the composition. So really trying to frame that elephant amongst the other 2 giants in there. So really trying to draw the viewer's eye straight into the elephant, but also not missing the 2 rhinos on the side. I have a question actually for both Nisha and Hermie, and maybe for all the viewers as well. I want to set this as a challenge to everyone, and we're going to see over, maybe Nisha, you can make this one of your Paws Trails challenges. We want to see how many of the big 5 any of your viewers or followers can get in one frame. How many have you got, Hermie or Nisha? Have you got 3?
No, I think I got only 2.
2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think. Sorry, I've got 3. I've got buffalo, elephant, and lion. But it's, I mean, the buffaloes are very far. You can't really count it. So I think it would be a good challenge for all your followers and viewers on Paws Trails to try.
Definitely.
That's interesting one.
That's definitely interesting. I really need to think about when you talk about buffalo. I'm still thinking, because I know I have lion and elephant in one frame, but I'm thinking whether I have one with lion, elephant, and buffalo, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, you might have. I guess the leopard's the hardest, because generally when you see a leopard, you may only see one more.
Yeah.
This is an image of, again, a male lion. His name is Halftail. You can see he's only got half a tail there. It was very early in the morning, and the sun was rising to our left there. And he was sitting. The sun was already rising. He was sitting. We were just praying, get up, do something active. We need that silhouette of you walking. We were quite far out, so initially I was shooting this with a zoom lens to fill my frame with this male lion, just walking from left to right. But then I had an idea. I said, let me shoot it a little bit wider. I did not have my 16 to 35 at that point. So this was shot at 70 millimeters. But again, in terms of, I ran out of space here. So I kept on telling our driver to drive towards our right so that I could have the sun behind the lion instead of to the left of this lion to get that absolutely perfect silhouette. And also to have space for the lion in the frame on the right-hand side. So basically to put that lion on the bottom left of the screen. But we had hit Rhino Ridge by this time, and for you guys who know Rhino Ridge well, there's so many rocks there. Without damaging our car, we just couldn't go any further. So it was one of those those funny, positive but frustrating moments where you just put down your camera and say, okay, I've done the best I can in this scenario, but next time I really want to get that dream shot of mine. I'm sure a lot of you guys might have felt that every 9 out of 10 things lined up, but that one thing didn't. But there's always a next time for that.
Yeah.
I still like this image. It shows who the lion is, which it's half tail and kind of quite a regal image with nicely backlit with some decent hues in there as well.
Wow.
This is an interesting image that I took, I think again in March, maybe. So rainy season, we were coming back to camp, the last light behind us falling onto the giraffes, and big black skies, storm just going away, and the sun, literally the last few minutes of the sun lighting the giraffes really, really nicely. I purposely shot very wide. I could have shot narrow and gone zoomed in. But for me, the dramatic skies were working. Putting the giraffes right at the bottom worked really nicely. And as the light hit them, I underexposed in camera. So I got the dark skies, the dark green forest behind them. But where the light was hitting them, that came up, that really popped out. In post-productions, I upped the luminance on the yellows. So just to make the giraffes pop out a bit. Again, remember something I mentioned earlier, this is art. There is no limits. The only limits are your imagination. You can do what you want. There are no rules. If it starts looking ridiculous, then you know to stop or carry on. It really depends on what you want to achieve with the images and where you draw the line. This image is a classic example of that. It's not for the purists, but I tried it in color. I didn't like it. Everything was kind of blending into each other, the greens and the yellows. When I tried it in black and white, it really worked because the yellows just pop out there.
Yeah, so we have a question based on this, from Nadir Salyani. Why is black and white considered more artistic than color, whereas color gives a lot more details?
I think it's a fantastic question. For me, there's a couple of reasons. Black and white usually for me is a longer read into the photo. I want to stare at an image for longer when I'm looking at a black and white image, because a lot of detail is missing actually in black and white photos. I stop and think, in this photo, would the sky have been blue? Would it have been yellow or orange? Would the grass have been green? Would it have been orange? Would it be burnt out? So I'm thinking a lot, trying to figure it out. The other thing about black and white images, which I always teach on my photo safaris, is when you remove the color from your images, you're leaving your brain to think of one less thing. Your brain now, when I'm looking at this image, my brain is not processing any blues, yellows, greens, or oranges. My brain is focusing on the composition, on the mood, on the emotion. So say initially 50% of my brain power was being used on color. Now I've got that extra 50% capacity in my brain to think about all these emotions that the image is pouring out to me. Thinking about the mood, the emotions. How do I feel? This is what an image feels like, not what it looks like. So personally, I've really, really enjoyed black and whites, even for wedding photos. I love shooting black and whites. Actually, so Hermie, it's a brilliant question, and I would turn it completely back around and say, my theory is always, if color is not adding something to your image, I would shoot in black and white.
Okay.
And that's just my rule. Again, this is art. I can make my own rules. You can make your own rules. Something I think of, how I think of my wildlife photography is, if color is not adding to what I want the image to feel like, it becomes automatically a black and white image. If you look at my processed images, more than 50%, more probably 60% of images are black and whites.
Okay.
Hope that's answered the question.
Yeah. And on that, we have one more person made his comment, Gurveer. It makes you think more and leaves a lot to the imagination of the viewer, and easier to look at it, I feel.
Yeah, 100%. And if it's the same Gurveer, I think it is. I've loved his black and white lion photos as well. He's a master at shooting big male lions. So I don't know if it's the same one though.
Maybe, I think so.
I also love shooting emotions. I love shooting interaction between mother and cub, or male and female of the same species. This is of an elephant calf and the mother. Again, purposely, I decided to frame this without including the mother's eye or the top level of the mom's face on it, just to create that mystery. And I realized the closer in I go into this photo, the more I zoomed in, the more details I got of the textures, of the tusks, of the trunk, the skin, the leather. So for a lot of photos, I love that abstract feel of leaving the eyes, leaving the ears, and really concentrating and going very tight in. Again, this is a nice black and white photo because there's no distractions. Otherwise, the grass at the bottom would have distracted you even more than it does now. There would be green grass showing from the bottom, and your eyes would think, oh, what is this grass? But in black and white, it kind of disappears with that. This is another big male lion. One of my favorites, and I know he's a favorite amongst many here. His name is Doa. He's one of the six-pack, very, very, very handsome lion. And we were lucky enough one evening to get him. The sun had already set, actually, on the right-hand side. But we had to be very careful in framing this lion, because if I'd put him on the left of my screen, you can see there's very little room there. There's very little highlight there to frame him in. So I had to put him on the right, so the highlights are all at the back, and he is a perfect silhouette. When you look at this, he just appears to be the perfect male lion, a well-groomed mane, a strong chin, a perfect definition of a lion. I really like this image, actually. Wow. This is the famous town of Bora, the 5 cheetahs in the Mara, the coalition of the 5. Honestly speaking, whenever we were shooting the 5, I started getting super bored, and I was getting the same images every time. The 5 walking towards you, all cramped in one screen, the 5 running, etc. And I said to my guide, I really want to try something different this trip. And I told him, this is the image I've got in my mind. Big sky, ideally lots of clouds and moody, kind of dramatic sky. The 5 walking in a line, and I would place them in the bottom left of my screen. So we looked and looked and looked, and you know how hard it is with all the 50 or 60 cars surrounding them. But one day we got lucky. I absolutely, really, I love this image because I know how hard we've worked for this image. The bonus in this image was we also got an impala in the middle of the screen there. So it almost appears that the Tanabora are heading towards the impala, about to kind of make their dinner preparations. But what you don't know, or this is why I love photography and art. You can really deceive the viewer here, because in reality, that impala was almost 150 meters further out in the background than the cheetahs. So they were not even in the same plane, not even close to being in the same plane. So it just shows how you can actually use that deception and depth of field to create that very, very encapsulating image that when you look at it, it's telling that whole story, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is a leopard called Kidonda, one of Kabosso's daughters. I've not seen her again for a long time. We were observing her, looking at some monkeys up on a tree. She was down on the ground, and again, we noticed there was that harsh sunlight in the middle of the day. When it filters through all the leaves and the branches, it creates such a beautiful effect on any animal that's sitting underneath it. I've got many photos of like leopards looking at you or giving you that side view, but I'd never got the bottom, like the chin and the teeth of the leopards, the canines looking up. So again, it was a nice different image for me. I'd underexpose this in camera by probably about 2 stops because the light was so harsh. So everything around the leopard went dark, except for the leopard, which just really shone out. Again, I turned this into a black and white. This also looked good in color because it gave the dark greens as well, but I like it in black and white as it just focuses completely straight down on the canines of the leopard. This is again of Doa and his mate. They were honeymooning early morning on the Topi Plains. What I like about this image, the sun has risen already, and you can see the female trying to lead him on with the tail up. It's always wagging his tail back and forth for the male to chase the female. This to me, bit of a Lion King type of image, looking over the whole kingdom early in the morning, making sure everything's okay. So I quite like the tones in this image are very soft as well because of that morning light. So I can't believe, I was just thinking about it now, I can't believe we're on slide 25 now. It's taken me 25 slides to show you a close-up of my favorite animal in Masai Mara. But we're finally here. This is a female leopard called Kabosso, and one of her cubs. This was shot probably 2 years ago. And again, we were deep in the river valley, and a lot of different pockets of light falling everywhere. And she was looking really stressed out, making those calls, this typical leopard calls. So we knew she had a cub somewhere. We'd seen this cub a few days before. As you can see, the cub is quite big, so it was quite adventurous and walking around on its own. And we were probably about 100 meters away from this leopard. And we were all focused on the left of the car, shooting this mum, and she was calling out to the cub. And out of nowhere, one of the guests spotted the cub on the right of our car, really scampering very, very quickly towards the leopard, towards the mum. So luckily, we were all ready because we knew when they met, there would be a beautiful interaction between the two. The light was really, really nice, as you can see overhead from on the leopard's face. You can see the sharp whiskers in focus. And as the leopard went, we got almost 3 to 4 seconds of this kind of nuzzling and hugging and licking each other. I just love this leopard. So, for me, it was a very, very special moment to see her like this with the cub. This is one of Bahati's 2 cubs, the recent cubs. They are very adventurous, very boisterous. We were watching them. The mom had gone away for a hunt, we believe, because she didn't come back the whole day. We actually spent the whole day literally under these 2 trees waiting for the mom to come back, but she didn't come back the whole day. In the middle of the day, these cubs had kind of refound their energy, and they were just jumping from one tree to another, to another, to another. I had 2 options. One is to overexpose the image and get the leopard in good exposure, so you could see the details in the leopard, but then blow out the sky, or underexpose it completely, so we just get shadows of the leopard. What I really liked about this image was the kind of mystery it creates, and the pause in mid-flight. Again, I turned this in. This was a 5-second edit. Just had to turn it in black and white and decrease the shadows to really accentuate those blacks in there.
Wow.
This is my favorite image of your collection. My favorite.
That's very interesting, Nisha, because it's actually one that I wasn't even going to put in this presentation.
I love this one.
And then I remembered, I said, because I have a really nice story. We worked hard for this image, basically. So for the viewers who might not be able to see this, actually, that is a lioness on the tree. It's not a leopard. This is quite a famous tree in between Topi Plains and the Musiara Marshes. We have photographed 2 wedding couples under this same tree, actually. So it means a lot to me and those couples as well. We got to this, we were driving around. We heard that there was a lioness up on a tree. So we got to the sighting. The lioness was just sat there on the tree, catching the late afternoon sun, and just sitting there getting, just looking very bored, what lionesses do best, not really moving or anything. We waited and waited and waited and waited more. I said to the driver, we are not moving anywhere. At some point, this lioness is going to come down before the sun goes down. And he said, well, you don't know, Parit. It might stay here. In case it's injured or something, she might stay up here the full day. I said, no, we've got nothing else on the radio. We're sitting here. Let's wait. And he said, actually, okay, let's wait. He then said, Parit, look, there's actually a storm coming in from the left. So there is a possibility, if there is thunder and lightning, the lioness is going to get scared and she might walk down. Again, you can see that mist or that fog, the rain, coming in from the left of the screen. About 3 minutes after this photo, the whole tree was just rained upon. So the rain is coming from the left to the right. My default here would have been to pick up the biggest lens I have and shoot that lioness in perfect silhouette, but filling the frame up with just the lioness.
Yeah.
Then something at the back of my mind said, Parit, you are working hard on getting these big, wide images. Try that. Forget this zoomed in image. But still, even as I have my 16-35 in my hand, I'm getting that FOMO. I'm thinking, what if I miss this? What if the lion jumps? Or what if it stretches and I'm going to miss that amazing close-up shot? And I'm thinking, no, today's the day you're going to take that risk. Underexposed it, took that shot. And actually, when I took it, I quickly looked at it and I had this huge smile on my face, big smile on my face, thinking those 4 hours were really worth it. That shot you get when you get back to the camp, and that's the day in the evening where you have that glass of wine and you at dinner and you think, yes, there is a God watching over me.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I was waiting for this image from the beginning.
Uh, Thank you, Nisha. Thank you. And this brings me to the last image of this kind of presentation or the webinar. This was a very difficult image. Morning light, pretty harsh light. It wasn't very directional. Probably about 9 o'clock in the morning. It was Doa and one of the Topi females. We had been shooting them head on for almost half an hour as they were walking, marking their territory, probably trying to look for the rest of the pride. Then I saw at one point they were looking together in the distance, and I said to the guide, I said, Bernard, I need this shot. I've seen something really magical happen here where the male lion's shadow is an exact stencil of the female's outline. He got me in the right spot. For this shot, I'm glad I zoomed in quite as much as I did. But again, this is why I put this image at the end. An image has a lot of meanings. For me, this really symbolizes relationships. It really symbolizes the age-old saying, behind every man there's a very strong woman, and especially amongst the lionesses, amongst lion prides, we all know how hard lionesses work. So most of the times the males take center stage when we're photographing. Everyone wants to photograph big male lions, but this time I really wanted to put the female into focus, whether it's with human relationships, animal relationships. The amount of work and things that the females do is just, it can never be surpassed by males. And I really wanted to portray this in one image. And for me, out of my whole portfolio, this image shows that in the clearest, that, the male is in the shadow of the dominant female here.
Yeah.
So with this, I have one kind of parting message to the viewers and the people who've kindly, very, very kindly taken out a long time today to watch this webinar. My one big piece of advice, and you've heard me talk about it a lot over the last hour and a bit, is light. Look for the light. Think about the light. Think about the quality of the light, the quantity of the light. Light is your magical ingredient when you're talking or thinking about art. Art doesn't just happen overnight. You've got to develop an eye for it. But good light really helps. You've noticed through the last hour or so, as promised earlier, I didn't talk that much about my settings. More so, I talked about the emotions, how I was feeling, what I want the image to show, some of the techniques, some of how instances, how the light works, etc. Yeah. So I really, really hope you guys found this useful. I love interacting with followers, with friends, with fellow wildlife photographers. So any feedback, any comments, any images you would like to share, send me a message on Instagram. Our handle is Cheka Photo Safaris. Send it through this Paws webinar in the comments, etc. But yeah, I love interacting with you guys. So the floor is yours now.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was spectacular. I mean, every image, every story, the way you feel, we also feel the same. That's the connection you managed to build.
Thank you. Sorry, Nisha, to disturb you. Can I stop this and view it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
What do I do?
Just stop sharing.
Yeah.
Is that cool?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I'm in for any questions in case there's any.
There
Yeah.
are.
So we have a question from Neeli Kutka. Hi Nisha, Hermes, and Parit. What an amazing webinar. Well done, Parit. Parit, in one word, describe your style.
Uh, different.
That's a good one.
It's a good question. Yeah, I'd say different.
Great.
That's great.
Great.
We have.
I think we may have to do one more session because we have a lot of questions on post-production side. Helmi, if you go to the beginning.
Yeah. So people are asking about your style of editing.
Okay, so it's a question actually I get asked quite a lot. There's a lot to cover from an editing perspective. It's like you say, it's a whole new webinar in itself, or it's something we can't do justice in over just a few minutes. Like I said earlier, some photos I only spend literally 5 to 10 seconds editing. Others I can take up to 20 minutes. What do I say my style of editing is? Overall, I like my edits to be moody. I generally don't like the oversaturation. I don't like high key images, except for very rarely, like that one of Scar I showed you guys, the one I call Ghost. I generally very rarely shoot high overexposed images. My style, I would say, is dark, moody images. I like desaturated. I like the deeper greens. I don't like overly sharpened images. So maybe in a few months, more than happy to go through some of, maybe we take 1 or 2 images and go through them. Maybe in this webinar, I could or should have showed a before and after, but maybe we'll leave it for another time.
That
But
is another
I would
question.
be more than happy. Hermie and Nisha, I've got nothing to hide. I truly believe in the more you share, the better our whole bigger wildlife community will be. So, yeah, 100% more than happy to do that.
Yeah, a lot of people want to see that before and after photos as well.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
So actually, on that note, maybe Hermie, one thing I will do maybe tomorrow or the day after for 1 or 2 of these images, I will post up the before and after on my stories maybe tomorrow or the day after. And I'll even send them to you guys as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we can share it on our Insta as well as on the stories. Yes.
Sure. Perfect.
Yeah.
So we have another question from Paul Manuran. What's your outlook about conservation and preservation? Are we actually conserving nature, or are we hustling to preserve the quickly depleting nature around us?
Again, a brilliant question, and it depends how long we have. I can talk about this for a very, very, very long time.
We have time. It's okay.
my strong belief is we human beings have really done a lot of negative things in our generation, more so than any generation before us. We have done so much harm compared to the good we have done. If I was to put it on a scale, we have done that much harm and maybe that much good. Look throughout the globe, global warming, putting nasty things into rivers and oceans. We watched Seaspiracy with the family a few weeks ago. It was just mind blowing. The extent to what we have damaged. So my outlook to this is we need to help, and this doesn't have to be big things. Not all of us can go and save 1,000 elephants in 1 year. What we keep on teaching our children and our friends and ourselves is every little thing helps. So whatever small changes you make to your lifestyle really help in making those changes globally, because there could be a million people like you making those small changes. And when you add everything up, those are when the bigger changes come in. You know, something I didn't know about, I learned 2 weeks ago, was this whole thing about using the lack of plastics. I learned it from Seaspiracy, where they were talking about there's so much advertising and negative campaigning about stop using single-use plastics, etc. But that's a tiny part of the problem. The big problem is the overfishing. You know, why is no one talking about that? I believe we are now in a stronger position that a lot of wildlife photographers are able to influence the locals living in the areas where we operate. Hermia and Nisha, I'm sure the same with you guys as well. When we go out with guides and drivers on game drives, we encourage them, pick up rubbish, pick up trash. We listen to their standpoint as well. We ask our Maasai drivers, why don't you kill lions anymore? Why did you used to kill lions before? Understand from their perspective. You know, life isn't always that clear. Until their argument has always been, until we all came into their territory, they were living very happily with humans were living very happily with the wild animals in Masai Mara. So what changed? So yeah, my outlook at the moment is actually not very positive, because I think we've already done a lot of harm. But my advice, and especially for the younger generation, is, you know, you guys are the change. We are all the change together. Every little effort we make at this level gets multiplied so much if everyone around us makes that change.
Yes. That's great.
Okay, Vijay Kumar Sangram, you have developed a unique way of telling a story. Did this happen on your first or second trip, or over a period of many trips?
I say definitely not first or second trip. I might even try and dig out some of my photos from my first or second trip, but I'll delete them after showing them to you guys. They're very, very different. I think the little bit I talked with you guys about initially, I think my wedding photography has really helped me. With wedding photography, we have to tell a story just showing an image or a picture. We are not shooting motion video. I'm shooting a picture. That one photo has to show that story. And guess what? With wedding photography, you only get that chance once. When that moment has gone, say a bride and groom are hugging or kissing, or they're laughing at each other, that natural moment will only come once. Once that, I've only got one chance to shoot it. Once that's gone, it's gone. You know, it's not like the Tanabora hunting every day. If I miss it today, I'll come back tomorrow. I'll get it. It's fine. But if I miss a wedding shot, there's a problem. So I've really, really worked very hard in looking for stories and then trying to capture them on my screen, and then applying that to the wildlife side of things. So there's a very clear distinction here. A lot of people just talk about storytelling images and capturing them. But actually, the bigger part is actually identifying, looking for them. It's all happening in front of us, but how do you look for them and identify them before you can even capture them? I don't know whether that makes sense. You know, it's the first point is, how do you, in your brain, say, there is a story here? The second part is, okay, how am I going to capture it? So it's really training your mind. What story do you want to project? And you, as a photographer, can really project different types of stories as well, using the same scene. So no, in short, it didn't happen overnight. I had to work very, very hard at it. I also found, small things like reading books, watching documentaries, watching movies, things like that really helps as well, trying to frame all that.
Great. Piyush Salva is saying, well done, super session. I'm looking forward for a photo safari again with you.
Thank you.
Harman Singh, Parit, thank you for transporting us to the Mara with your photos. Beautiful work. What is your favorite park to visit in Kenya?
Oh, that's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. I don't know whether I can answer this or not. So I love the Masai Mara. However, a big however, I feel now, having been there continuously for 5 to 6 years, I'm beginning to know the park very, very well. And instead, I want to try and explore and discover other parks in Kenya. I mean, going all the way from the beautiful landscapes of Amboseli to the big tuskers of Savo and the red dust, to the leopard sitting on the trees in Samburu. It's a hard one. I would probably say, if I was looking for undiscovered stuff, probably Savo or Amboseli at the moment. One park I've not been to, which I've got another image in my mind. I don't know, Hermie or Nisha, whether you guys have done Lake Nakuru National Park, but
Yeah.
I've got an image in my mind I've seen some images of these big forest trees up there.
Yeah.
With some giraffes. I want my leopard on there on that tree with all those trees with perfect light. So Lake Nakuru National Park is definitely up very high up on my list as well. No, I've not been there, but it's one on the kind of a bucket list.
Yeah, you get the yellow trees.
Yes, that's the ones. Those are the ones. The bark of the yellow trees.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if Herman, you want a very definite answer at the moment, I would say Savo for the big tusker elephants at the moment, and it's very undiscovered at the moment still. I feel Mara is so saturated. Everyone's doing Mara. For me, going back to the question Nili asked me earlier, how do you see your style? If I'm saying I'm different, I want to get those different photos, I need to start venturing into different parks as well.
Yeah. And Piyush is again asking, how do you find Amboseli compared to Mara?
It's very different. I really like the discipline in Amboseli Park overall. It's not like a rat race in Mara where 40, 50 cars are chasing one sighting down. Depends what you want to shoot. If I want to shoot elephants, I would go to Amboseli and Savo. If I want to shoot big cats, nothing beats Mara, right? I mean, the big cat density in Mara, especially in certain parts of the Mara, there's nothing in the world like that. Even going back to what Jeffrey was saying last week, even Serengeti can't give Mara a run for its money. So it really depends what you want to shoot.
Yeah. And we have a question from Ravi. What advice would you give a passionate 12-year-old wildlife photographer?
You can ask my 12-year-old son, Arav, or my daughter, Amaya, for what advice they would give. But jokes aside, one thing I always tell the next generation is, and it sounds really cliched, but there is a reason I'm saying this, is follow your passion. If you're passionate about something, don't give up. There will be days, there will be weeks where things might not go as you'd hoped. You might go to the Mara and it's been raining the whole week. You'll come back with 10 usable images, but that's fine. That you always have your ups and downs. The biggest piece of advice on that note I'd give is patience. Often the younger generation, especially in this day and age, sometimes feel entitled, and they are in that era of everything happens now. Internet is there. The remotes are there for all the devices. Cell phones are there. We grew up without those. I learned how to shoot on a film camera. I would go shoot, and my photos, I could only see the results after 3 days. They would go get processed in a lab and stuff. Whereas at the moment, you can see a photo within a few milliseconds of taking it. So a lot of the next generation have forgotten about patience. Forget the next generation, even our generation. When we go on safari, they're like, okay, we're done with the leopard. Let's go to the lion. Let's go to the cheetah. You're like, hold on, you're not learning anything here. It's up to you, but at the end of the day, take things a bit slowly. So the biggest piece of advice I'd give is have patience, and I promise you it will pay off.
Kushil Hirani is asking, hi Parit, any tips on getting good silhouettes?
So for a silhouette, ideally you want to really go low as possible wherever you're shooting from, and make sure your subject is between you and the light. So the light always has to go behind the subject. So in order, it'll be light, subject, and then you shooting. Always try and get down low. In some cases, you might need to underexpose a little bit, but it all depends on the lighting conditions and stuff. But yeah, those are the 2 tips I would give for silhouettes.
Yeah. What camera would you recommend me to buy for taking wildlife photographs? Amir Megji, 10 years old.
So thanks, Amir. I know you and your dad. So thanks for that question. We get this question asked a lot, actually. The 3 things I would say is, what do you need the camera for? What is your budget? And thirdly, you always first need to work on your visualization and your imagination before you get a fancy camera. You can give the best photographer in the world an iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy or whichever camera phone, and they will create some amazing images just using a $100 phone. On the flip side, you can give a beginner a D6 or whatever the new Canon camera is, or an Alpha 1, $6,000 to $10,000 worth of camera equipment, and they wouldn't even know what to do with it. So it really, really depends on what you want to do with the photos, what your budget is. I would say you should go and try out certain cameras if you're 10 years old as well, because a lot of the bigger cameras, you might find it hard to hold steady. So you might want to start with a slightly smaller camera, so you're always holding it very stable. Remember to use a beanbag when you're shooting, so you get a really nice stable grip on your camera. But yeah, it really, really depends what you want to use it for. I started off with, I think at that time it would have been like a $50 compact camera with film inside. It didn't even have a zoom. I really need to dig out those old photos that I originally took with that camera. So also remember, you don't have to start with the top range equipment straight away. You build your way slowly up to that, as long as you're carrying on in that passion.
Another question from Lalindra De Silva. How did your transition to become a professional wildlife photographer?
Great question, Lalindra. Lalindra is a very close friend of mine as well, actually. Recently, we were together in Savo last weekend, where out of all places, can you imagine, we saw 6 lionesses kill a pregnant buffalo. It was just out in Savo. So thanks for the question, Lalindra. It was not an easy transition. I will definitely tell you the longer story, maybe over a beer or a coffee one day in Mombasa. But the short story is, it's not that easy. Giving up. So maybe something I didn't tell you guys earlier was, I'm actually a qualified chartered accountant, and I was working in finance for 20 years in London. No, sorry, 15 years in London. And then when we moved to Kenya was actually my transition point of becoming a professional photographer. There's different definitions of the word professional. For me, when someone says professional, I say when you're earning more than 75% of your income through that field, that is when you're turned professional. It's not anything to do with your quality or your skill level. It's more how the income's coming in. So going from a job where I was getting a healthy paycheck every month, a nice share options, a pension scheme, set number of days of holiday, it was a nice lifestyle. From that to, oh gosh, I'm a wildlife or a wedding and a wildlife photographer. If I don't have a job, I have no income. So you've got to really work hard at your skill. There's no option. You've just got to really be the best you can possibly be in both wedding and wildlife photography. Learning every day is learning. And you don't, so Lalindra, a very good point here is you can be the best wildlife photographer, but if you don't have business acumen or business skills, you will never make money from it. And in that way, you can never turn professional. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, you can be a very average wildlife photographer, but if you're an amazing businessman, you could be a very successful wildlife photographer earning lots of money, shooting for competitions, magazines, prints. That's where the money comes in. But how much joy does that give you in your heart and your soul? So there's always a trade-off, It's a question I get asked by a lot of my family members. Since you turned professional, will you ever stop enjoying wildlife photography? Before you did it as a hobby, there was not much pressure. You go out there, you shoot, you look at those images once every now and then, you feel happy, you go back and you do the same thing. Since you turned professional, has that decreased your joy in what you do? And without thinking, my answer is no, it hasn't. The day it decreases my joy is the day I'll stop wildlife photography, because it won't be fair for me or the people around me.
Right.
So again, hope in a roundabout way it's answered your question, but I'll tell you the whole long story one day, Lalindra.
Rishabh Shah is asking, what country in Africa would you want to visit for shooting photos and why?
It's a great question. I've already been to this country, but I want to go again and shoot, and it's Namibia. Just because of all the different landscapes, different animals, especially the landscapes. It's one field where I want to increase my knowledge about photography and increase my portfolio as well, is more landscape photography. My wife, Dipali, and I went to Namibia about, I think, 13 or 14 years ago. And the variety in landscape is just phenomenal, really, really amazing. So yeah, for me, it would definitely be Namibia.
Great. I think we have covered almost all the questions.
Fantastic.
So there is one more. I think I have seen you lying down on the Jeep on a mattress to get low angle. That's a question.
Who is that from?
Anura Fernando.
Yeah. So yes, that is for low angle. I love shooting low. I sometimes like shoot. I mean, for different scenarios, you want to shoot from different parts of the car. But you more often than not find me lying down on the mattress with my camera next to me. Lot of advantages of that. I'm down low, so I'm seeing straight into the animal's eye. Lot of disadvantages to it. If your driver doesn't tell you he's about to go into a puddle, poof, all of a sudden, all the dust, all the mud in your face, Animals can get quite close. You have to be super professional, super patient, no sudden movements. That is the time when you and your guide have to have the most trusting relationship with each other. And you've got to really understand the warning signs and the behavior of animals. As soon as you sense any kind of panic, that's when you stop shooting. You've got to look after not only your safety, but the animal's safety. So yes, we do lie down a fair bit to get those low angle shots. And yeah, it's given us a somewhat different viewpoint to some other people when they're shooting.
Yeah. Piyush is again asking, have you thought of shooting snow leopards or tiger?
Good question. Yes. So I actually, this February, I was supposed to go and shoot snow leopards in Kiba, but COVID happened. I jest because we as a family are extremely grateful that we are all safe and sound during these very difficult times. And at the same time, I pray for everyone who has had to go through some rough times during COVID, especially people living in India at the moment. A lot of Nisha and I were talking about this earlier. It's not looking good in India at the moment, and we hope India comes out of this in a good way. So we hope things get better there. I will definitely 100%, as soon as everything's opened up, going to go and track down snow leopards and hopefully some tigers in India. But being a leopard fan, for me, I guess the absolute ultimate cat to capture would be a snow leopard, because they're just ghosts, right? You just don't see them, and if you do, split second and they're gone. So yeah, it would definitely be a snow leopard pretty soon. Nisha, Hermie, have you guys shot snow leopards?
No, not
We were planning
yet.
again in last Feb, 2020
Oh, wow.
Feb, but then
2019 Feb, that was the time it started coming, the COVID.
and then the next season was gone. This season is gone. So hopefully next season, if things works well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Gurveer has one more question. With a long lens 600 mm plus, do you get issues of heat haze? And how to fix that?
Yes, we do, especially during the middle of the day. It's messy because there is so much water vapor overnight in the ground that when the earth slowly starts heating up in the midday sun, all this haze comes up. Unfortunately, there's no easy way around it. That's why we generally don't shoot in the middle of the day. Something you can try and be creative and use that haze to make somewhat of a blurred image of your big male lion behind there, and just having the haze in focus and maybe a lion walking towards you. So almost kind of out of focus, blurry lion coming towards you, and let people, that's a long read photograph, right? People will have to really think, okay, what is this? What am I looking at? Has the photographer made a mistake? Is this on purpose? So really getting that longer view on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you guys have any tips on haze, we've shot many times. Especially the big problem for us is when the Tanabora are hunting. They love hunting between 12 and 2. That haze is just crazy.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think, yes, I've got all my settings right. Beautiful photos of them coming onto the prey. Then when you look at them, you're like, oh gosh, what happened there? And it's just the haze, right? There's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
So true. So true. Yeah. We have, and you have an invitation to Namibia.
Oh wow! Is that someone from Namibia?
Juan Winter Photography. Parit, you can join us on a trip to Namibia. We know the country as well as Mara.
Juan is pulling my leg. He knows. He's brilliant at Namibia. He's one of the photographers also based in South Africa. They do quite a lot of photography from that hide called, is it Ziminga?
Zaminga.
Yeah. So, So I'm actually hosting one here next time he comes. So
Okay.
cool. I'll take you up on that one.
Kush Hirani is asking, what time of the year would you say is the best to visit Mara in terms of weather and sighting?
It's a very applicable question, Kush. It depends what you want to shoot. It's and how often you want to get stuck. It's another thing Nisha and I were talking about earlier today. We both love shooting in the rain. It makes very different, unique images. Most people, when it rains, they don't even go out on a game drive, or they stay
Yeah.
in the lodge having chai and coffee. But we love going out in the rain because it makes really dramatic images.
Images.
So it really depends what you want from your images. At the moment, it's slightly wet in the Mara, but it will start drying up very soon. The migration season will be in full force from July to about September. Then again, Mara quietens down. Actually, my favorite time in the Mara is probably October, November, and then again in Jan, Feb. I really love it then. The grass is not that long. There's not that many people. There's still all the predators around. So yeah, it really depends what you want to shoot.
Yeah. We have a question from Shruti Kori. What's your take on photographing with camera traps, and as in, do you prefer shooting that way?
So thanks for that question, Shruti. I personally, and this might again be a controversial answer, I know a lot of wildlife photographers who use camera traps, and I respect a lot of photographers who still use them. I personally don't use camera traps at all. I prefer shooting using my hands whilst I'm holding a camera. At the worst, at the most, I would maybe connect up my camera to an overturned monopod, but still use a remote to trigger it. I personally have never used camera traps, and I don't feel that if I set up a camera trap in, say, an area and leave it there for a month, yes, the image I might get of a leopard walking through that area and at night would be pretty cool and different. I feel like I've cheated. I feel like I've not used much of my skill in setting that up or taking the actual photo. Some argue that it actually takes a lot of skill setting up a good camera trap with the lighting and the triggers, etc. I feel like I was nicely tucked away in my bed in the camp whilst this camera trap was just going off. And out of 1,500 photos, I've got 3 photos which are super. That's my very controversial view on camera traps.
Yeah, as you said, you touch both sides. Yes, it requires a lot of study when it comes to the understanding the track, understanding the light, and putting it in the right place and everything. But end of the day, it becomes very mechanical than anything else.
Yeah, agreed fully. So yeah, I want to point out, I'm like you say, Nisha, I'm not putting down the photographers who use camera traps because they are sharing images which we would never see otherwise.
Yes.
The lives of these animals at night and places. I mean, a lot of the snow leopard photos we see are using camera traps, right?
Yes.
I'm just saying it's not for me.
Yeah, it's Siberian tigers, Amur leopard, a lot are on traps. Yes.
Yeah.
Then you have another invite from Aaron from Sri Lanka to Sri Lanka.
Fantastic. I think I know Aaron and his dad very well. They've been in Mara a few times. They've just recently moved back to Sri Lanka. So I think, Nisha, from this trip, you're going to cost me quite a lot of airline tickets or air miles.
End of the day, you're going to get some different photos from different places.
Yeah, different.
All right, it was spectacular.
Yeah.
I think we kind of answered almost all the questions so far. So thank you,
Yes.
Parit. It was really an amazing journey for us on your perspective, the way you see things, the way you project things, the way you process things, and the way you talk. So it was spectacular.
Very, very informative, educational session.
Yes.
And we are happy that we have chosen you as one of our
Yes.
guests for the day. And thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. I really enjoyed it. I just love interacting with other wildlife photographers, especially you guys. I have seen you both in the field so many times. We sit, sometimes we talk to each other.
Yeah.
If you had asked me 2 years ago, I would have never even imagined that us three would be sitting in one virtual room like this, discussing wildlife photography. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. Thank you once again, and we'll see you in the field very, very soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and to the rest of you, thanks a lot for dialing in and spending your valuable evening time on here. Anytime you guys have any questions, either contact me through Nisha or Hermie, or send me a message on Instagram. Anything works.
Yeah.
So
That's
everybody, take care of yourself and have a wonderful evening.
And don't forget, it's COVID time. Please make sure, until unless it's very, very necessary, please don't go out. If at all you're going out, make sure you're keeping your hands clean, using the mask, and keeping the social distance. This is not fun. So please take care.
Yes, and see you in another session soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.